I've always looked at teaching or education from a very purist standpoint, that all children need to be taught, regardless of color, race, ethnicity, those things, socioeconomics. I sometimes feel that when we know those kinds of things, we treat people differently, or that we feel that they may fall into a stereotype. And so I really tried to take the student as they were when they walked in the classroom, both when I was a classroom teacher and as an administrator. Now I have to say, as an administrator, I probably knew that type of information because of my interactions with my guidance counselors, social workers in their building and things like that, but still tried to say, always coming back to the pure thing, is what does that child need to learn? And if we required or were required or could help in any way, you know, with assistance, whether it be, as I said earlier, for school supplies, we tried to provide those. I know one of the things that I did as an administrator that was really a very unique thing is that I had access to community agencies, and so when the cold weather came and I noticed that students didn't have the proper coats, gloves, mittens, those kinds of things, then somehow those appeared in the school, and the guidance counselor always took care of that. And I always stayed out of it. I kind of was the anonymous person that contacted agencies, and then my guidance counselors did the distribution, and I got to see the results of it. But that was always something that we did that I was always able to do, that kind of, you know, made a good situation out of something that might not have been the best.
One year I taught in Leavenworth, Kansas, and the economic status, social development of my students was less underdeveloped, if you will, compared to other places, and my students were more challenged. There were students from single parents, families. There were students being raised by grandparents. Many had parents who were drug addicts or in prison, because Leavenworth has 3 prisons there, and so many of the families moved there to see their loved ones in prison on weekends or whenever the visitation days were there. So the background was different. These were children that were used to parents being in trouble with the law, doing activities other than that were legally accepted, and they didn't have responsible parents. So the way I taught the class was different in that I had to have more structure, but I also had to have more compassion. And I needed to do both to be successful with students that were coming with that many problems into the classroom. I had to be understanding that, yes, they had a terrible home life, but knowing that, and them knowing that, we were going to move forward and make progress besides that fact. And so we still had I needed more structure because they didn't have structure at home.
Well, I think teachers need to understand the differences of schools. I think they need to understand which ones are Title I schools, what the makeup of the children are. I don't think that should affect them in the fact that we should not have high expectations for all children. We need to know that children are going to come to school ready to learn in different ways. And they may have situations that we need to consider that will affect how we teach those students. For instance, many students may not have eaten breakfast, and so it's hard to learn when you're hungry. Or they may have been involved in situations over the weekend that have not been positive. And we need to understand that situations like that happen with students of all socioeconomic statuses. However, probably more from students with lower economic. So we need to understand the thinking behind that, the issues behind those being of lower socioeconomic status, the cultural issues of those that are of different lower socioeconomic status. And we need to be able to use multiple intelligences and to really try to do different things to support them in learning. And I think some teachers really enjoy working in those schools that may have lower socioeconomic status or more of a Title I school than others. And that's okay. I think teachers need to understand what types of schools they like and that type of situation.
I think it's probably pretty safe to say that any classroom teacher, regardless of the level they're teaching, I suggest they assume that students are going to come in at a lower social economic level, just to be on the safe side. From personal experience, when I was young, I was one of those students who did not have a whole lot. Actually, after I graduated, I was able to teach with some of my teachers I had at the elementary level. So I had the opportunity to ask them, what did you think of me when I was a student? And I was quite surprised that they had a whole different perception. They had no idea the background, especially the poorness of my family, where I came from. So that was a big eye-opener for me, because I would assume the teachers would have known. So I think it's just safe to say, assume that probably the majority of the students, especially today, and I think most people will know, depending on the district they're teaching in the area of town, but it's probably safer to assume that they're coming from a lower socioeconomic status.
I'm not sure we can do a whole lot with the outlook, but I think we can do a lot of supporting of the students. I mean, I think teachers can be very much involved in community activities, because there is where some change can take place. But I think we as educators can inspire and can support students as they go through different things in their growing up years. And I think we can make learning a positive thing for kids, and that they can feel safe and supported in the school. When you look at the research, even with the nasty things that happen in schools, schools are still one of the safest places to be. It can be a safe haven for kids, and that we as teachers learn to support and assist those students that really need that extra efforts on our part to be successful. We need to work on that. And I think that it's not always so much money or that type of thing, but it's also how good kids feel about themselves.
I don't know if there's anything they can do to improve their students. I mean, because they can only do what they can in the classroom. So to improve that, I don't think it's possible. What they can do is improve the motivation the students have within themselves to reach their potential and their goals, and to be successful in the classroom. So when they grow up, they won't have those same issues they did as a student.
I think they need to understand that education is the key to getting out of that particular status. And that's difficult to do with a lot of influences out there, where some places are showing an easy fix, a quick way to do this, quick way to, earn this, work at home kinds of things, and all these hypes and public promotions for things, when basically it takes work. I mean, you have to work, and the key to that is an education. And I always tell people, work now so that you can play later. And I always, believe that you work now, you go to school, you be as successful as you possibly can, and that will afford you opportunities that you might not normally have had. And that's sometimes a very difficult thing to get students to break out of that idea. They don't see an immediate payoff. They don't see that it might be, through a high school and maybe even undergraduate degree, that it will pay off for them when they're 14 years old.